So again, in our training content site, I'll show you where we're going. Go back. Okay, so that's the first one we did. This is the one we did this morning. So we're on to this one here, learning path, configuring profiles for users and devices. Okay, so go to that section. I'll send that link to you guys in the chat window. Okay, so if you just click on that, it'll take you straight to where you need to go. Okay, just get the file shut up. Yes, we started. Okay, so learning part 3, configure profiles for users and devices. There's 3 sections to this one: execute device profiles, oversee device profiles, maintain user profiles. So essentially what we're talking about here with regard to profiles, this is what's called a configuration profile. So configuration profile, things we configure in our Intune in order for us to be able to control the various devices in the organization. This one over here, maintaining user profiles, well, that's your user profile that you've got on Windows. We've had that since 2000 on, so there's no real difference. Yes, it's changed a bit over the years, specifically with regards to Windows Vista. They made a bit of a change of where the profiles resided, etc. But it's nothing new to Windows 10 as such. All good, all good. Okay, so executing our device profiles. We're talking about exploring Intune device profiles, creating our device profiles, and creating a custom device profile. So with our device profiles, or configuration profiles. So in the past, they called it configuration profiles. They're now tending to name it a device profile, but essentially it's a way of specifying how we want our devices to be configured. So they mentioned there, Intune includes settings and features we can enable or disable on different devices within the organization. So I could have a Wi-Fi profile that I go and configure. So the user has the Wi-Fi profile configured on their device. They're able to access the corporate Wi-Fi. For a VPN profile, so they can access our corporate data over a VPN. There's a whole bunch of different types of profiles that are already built into Intune. So we can see here we've got our administrative templates. So essentially the administrative templates you can think of as similar to your administrative templates that you have in your group policy. So we use administrative templates for configuring Windows devices. As they mentioned there in our student book, Microsoft Edge version 77, Internet Explorer, not that we use Internet Explorer anymore, Office programs, remote desktop, OneDrive, passwords, pins, etc., etc., etc. So there's a whole bunch of ADMX-backed group policies using the cloud. Certificates. So a whole bunch of different certificates we can configure. Yeah. So certificates. Simple certificate enrollment protocol, the SCIP certificates, public key cryptography standards, PKS certificates, certificates required for Wi-Fi's, for VPNs, for email profiles, etc. There's a whole bunch of different certificate profiles available to us there as well. As you can see, some things are specific to the various platforms. So our device features for iOS and macOS. controls features on those iOS and macOS devices. Device restrictions, that controls security, hardware, data sharing, and so on a device. Edition upgrade and mode switch is for our Windows devices. So there we can do an edition upgrade, automatically upgrade a device. So for example, a user may have a device running Windows Pro, and through the edition upgrade and mode switch, we can upgrade it to our Windows Enterprise Edition.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
Can you do the version upgrade using this, or this is just for the addition upgrade?
So say again.
Can you do the version upgrade for Windows using this profile, or just the addition?
When you say version upgrade from one version to another, yeah, you can. Windows Edition upgrades automatically upgrade devices that run some versions of Windows to a new edition. Yeah, so you can do it for new editions as well. Yeah. Email profiles, so basically settings that you use to configure your emails. Endpoint protection, there's a whole bunch of settings for endpoint protection. So BitLocker, Microsoft Defender, and so on. With the endpoint protection, obviously that's mostly for Windows devices, but some of the macOS devices you can configure using that as well. So for endpoint protection, it could be Windows and or macOS. Identity protection. So identity protection controls the Windows Hello for business experience. So if you're using Windows Hello, you can configure that through identity protection. Kiosk mode, settings profile configures a device to run one app or multiple apps. VPN profiles, we mentioned that earlier, Wi-Fi profiles. And while they haven't got them all listed here on this slide, and the old slides actually had a much bigger slide with tons and tons of profiles listed. So there are many, many profiles available in Intune. They're adding new profiles all the time. But if there isn't a profile that you need, you can create your own custom profile. So looking at the creation of device profile, we do it obviously from our Endpoint Manager Admin Center, go to our devices, and then go and select the particular platform that you want to create the configuration profile for. And the platform and profile type will determine what options are available. Of course, for it to have any effect, the profile needs to be assigned. So create the profile and assign it to your group. So you can assign it to selected groups, all users, all devices, or all users. You can also exclude groups from assignments. When you go and create a new profile, so you've got, just looking in the student book, it's not there on the slide, but maybe what I'll do, let's just see if this is still running. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so on the devices tab, scrolling further down, you will notice here under policies. Whoops, a little too far. Okay, so I've got compliance policies, conditional access policies, configuration profiles. So this is where we're doing it, configuration profiles. So go to our configuration profile. And then what do I want to do? So I want to create a profile. Platform. There's all the various platforms. So in this case, Windows 10 and later. And then what is my profile type? There I've got settings, catalogs, templates. So select templates. And there we can see all these various things listed over here. So there you can see our PKCS certificates, SCAP certificates, VPNs, Wi-Fi's. There's the edition upgraded mode switch, emails, endpoint protection, etc., etc. So let's say I wanted to create some device restrictions. Select on the device restrictions, create. So I'm creating a new profile now. I need to give it a name. And then stepping through, we've got our various configuration settings over here. So these are all the various things we can go and configure. As you can see, tons and tons of various things that we can go through and configure. What's going on with my computer here? Sorry, it's just going nuts here with emails. I've got all these emails already, but somehow it's downloading them all over again. Okay. Okay, so anyways, here's all our various configuration settings. So I'd go and configure my various settings over there. From there, moving on to assignments, that's where we would assign it to a group, so included groups, or maybe you want to exclude certain groups as well. And your applicability rules specify how to apply the profile when an assigned group, within an assigned group, and then review and create at the end of it. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, say again. Yeah. I think it's, let's have a look and see, intune.microsoft.com. It used to be called intune.microsoft.com, and then they changed it to endpoint. Maybe that's what it is. Let's just see. Intune. Oops.
I think they changed it back to Intune again. So it's the same thing. Endpoint and Intune. Yep.
Yeah, this is the confusion with all these.
I think they changed to endpoint, then went back to Intune again just recently.
They do all the time. Just
yeah.
So say again, the what? The Entra is your Azure AD. Okay, so Microsoft Intune Admin Center. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah, just takes us to the same place. Just to confuse it. And Entra, so what I'm on here over here with, here I'm in the Azure. I'm actually in Microsoft Azure, from where I'm managing my Azure AD, etc. But yeah, if you went into Entra, it's a separate site, but providing all your AD stuff. It's just confusing. I don't know why they go and do all of that, making all these different things.
With Intra, you can when you go to intra.microsoft.com, I think you can go straight to your Azure Active Directory, right?
So Entra is only Azure Active Directory,
yeah.
As opposed to your Azure portal.
It's a cut down version, I would say. That's the reason.
Correct. Yep. And it does things slightly differently as well.
Sure.
Just the way you get to things is slightly different, but it does the same thing at the end of the day. Okay. Where are we up to? I think up to all that. Looking at our custom device profiles. So we can create a custom device profile. Windows 10, Android, iOS. Depending on which platform we're doing a custom profile for, it'll differ slightly. So Windows and Android is quite similar. So to create a custom profile for Windows, we use the Microsoft Intune custom profile for Windows 11 and later. And we then deploy an Open Mobile Alliance Uniform Resource Identifier, or OMA URI identifier. So those settings basically control features on devices, and Windows makes many configuration service provider settings available. So with regards to our OMA URI settings, they are case sensitive. So you've got to type it in the correct case. They have a bit of an example there in the student book. So we're creating a connectivity profile, but just before that, they just talk generally about the custom profile. So input manager, custom profile, and then on the configuration tab under your custom URI settings, select add to create a new setting. You give it a name. So in the new profile you're creating, name, enter a unique name for your OMA URI setting, description, which is optional. You then type in the OMA URI, bearing in mind the case, it is case sensitive. Data type, which could be string, string XML, date and time, integer, floating point, Boolean, or base64, and then the value for that data type. And then an example they give there is creating a custom profile for connectivity, allowing VPN over cellular. So we've given it that name, given a bit of a description, which is optional. OMA URI /V and slash capital M, capital S, capital F, capital T. So again, all of that has to be done in the correct case. In this case, it's an integer value of 1. For our Android devices, we do it similar to the way we do our Windows. So again, through OMA URI settings. With regards to the Android devices, they don't expose a complete list of OMA URI settings that you can configure. So we are somewhat limited as to what they do enable us to do. For example, with the Android Enterprise custom profiles, we can create a Wi-Fi profile with a preset key. We can do a per app VPN profile, and we can restrict copy and paste actions between work and personal apps on the Android Enterprise devices. And then, of course, Apple does things differently. So with the Apple devices, we actually do this in the Apple configurator tool to configure the Apple devices. But yeah, just so that you know, you can create custom profiles for all of them. So Windows, Android, and the Apple devices. Okay, so that's our configuration profiles. We will be doing a lab where we go and create some configuration profiles. Once I've created a configuration profile, I may want to monitor it. So monitoring those, remember device profile, configuration profile, same thing. So in the student book, they're talking about configuration profiles. In our slides here, they're using the new term that Microsoft is using, device profiles. So monitor our device profiles in Intune, manage our device sync in Intune, managing our devices in Intune using scripts. So I've gone ahead and created some profiles, deployed it to my various devices, and I want to go and now view what is happening. So in Input Manager, go to your devices section. Under the devices overview, select monitor and select assignment status. And then you'll see something like this. So here I can see my profile assignment status for, in this case, macOS devices. It has succeeded on 2 devices. We don't have any other problems. And profile assignment status for macOS users. 2 users, presumably is the 2 users who are using those 2 devices. You'll notice it also mentions it's been assigned to a non-macOS device. So maybe a Windows device. This obviously is not something that's specific to Mac, something that can be maybe used on another device as well. If there were conflicts, we'd see conflicts up here. So viewing conflicts, we can show profile names that are creating the conflict, etc. These little icons over here in your Intune are actually links. So I could go through and select this circle. That will drill down and give me additional detail on these 2 devices that are represented over here. Or I could click on this one over here. It'll give me further detail on the 2 users who are associated with that circle over there. With regards to conflicts, so while we can see the conflicts over here, also under our devices, all devices, if we select device configuration, all configuration policies that apply to a particular device will be listed. We can select the policy. It'll show all the settings in that policy that apply to the device. And if the device is a conflict state, simply select the row that indicates conflict state, and you can drill down into further detail on that particular conflict. In the previous lesson, we spoke about the sync feature. And in our lab, we actually ran sync a few times. Not that it was really doing anything because we weren't really configuring anything in Intune. We were just enrolling them in Intune. But here they talk about the sync feature. So managing device sync in Intune. So we can manage settings and features on our devices with Intune policies. So that can be our device configuration profiles or device configuration policies. They sometimes call it a policy as well, so profile or policy. My compliance policies that we're going to talk about tomorrow, and my conditional access policies, which we'll talk about tomorrow as well. So those are the three different types of policies we might be setting up through Intune. So when I go and create a policy or create a profile, a configuration profile, and I want to go through and sync it to the device, we know we can do that through the settings menu that we did already. So in our settings, go to your accounts, go to where you've done your Azure join or registration or whatever it is, and sync it up. Provided it's been enrolled into Intune, you'll have that sync button available. So the mention of here, our Intune policies fall under configuration policies, device compliance, conditional access. I mentioned those three. What is this one here? Corporate device enrollment policy. Well, remember when we spoke about enrolling Apple devices through the Apple configurator tool, we could create an enrollment policy for those Apple devices. Well, those enrollment policies are pretty much the same as configuration policies. So it's a configuration policy for an Apple device, but we're configuring it in the Apple configurator tool. But it's still managed by Intune once the device has been enrolled into Intune. Okay. But done through the Apple configurator tool. Yes.
Does Intune have the ability to read those policies?
So basically, you configuring it. You configure the policy through your Apple configurator tool, but it'll sit there in Intune. You can see the policy there in Intune and manage it through Intune.
It's like an XML file or something that you upload.
Yep. Okay, so it says over here, when a device checks in, it receives any pending assigned actions or policies, and the check-in frequency depends on the platform and enrollment time. The sync device action will force the selected device to immediately check in with Intune. Okay, so we know immediate is not quite immediate. In your student book, there should be a table. Scroll down to that section past where it talks about these various policies. You should see a table there. Okay, so they say there, when a policy or an app is deployed, Intune will immediately begin notifying the device to check in with the Intune service. Typically takes less than 5 minutes. If a device doesn't check in to get the policy after the first notification is sent, Intune will make 3 more attempts. Of course, if the device is offline, it's not going to get that. So in which case it'll then it'll get it on its next scheduled check-in. When is the next scheduled check-in? For iOS devices, their check-in frequency is every 6 hours. Mac OS is the same. Android and Windows is 8. So I think that's what you were talking about earlier on about the 8-hour check-in. So yeah, depending on the particular device. However, if the device was recently enrolled, it's a little bit more frequent. And again, it's dependent on the platform itself. This is not a configuration setting from Intune. This is the device itself that is configured for their check-ins. This is the way it would check into any MDM service, not just Intune. So iOS checks in every 50 minutes for 6 hours, and then every 6 hours. Same thing with macOS. Android is every 3 minutes for 15 minutes, then every 15 minutes for 2 hours, and then every 8 hours. And Windows is every 3 minutes for 30 minutes, and then every 8 hours. Is that important? You know, okay, when a device is recently enrolled, what's recently enrolled? You know, up to the first day. So yeah, the first day, yes, it's going to check in more frequently, but after that, it's going to be every 6 hours for Apple stuff and every 8 hours for Android and Windows stuff. If you force the sync and the device is online, then of course it'll sync up whatever has been made available then. But yeah, where they say that it is immediate, we know it's not really immediate. As I mentioned, it could take, typically takes less than 5 minutes, but we sort of think of immediate as immediate. When you click sync, it's going to happen. 5 minutes is quite a long time, especially when you're busy with a lab or busy doing a configuration at work and you want to see it happen, isn't it? So just bear in mind, it doesn't always happen as quickly as we would like. As you will see going through this week and doing your labs, remember you're working on a live system. Yes, we've got a demo account there, but it's a live system you're working on. And you'll see sometimes, especially when you got domain joining, Azure AD domain joining that you're doing in Azure and enrollment that you're doing in Intune, you might see the device pop up in Azure, but it's not yet in Intune. Sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes you'll see it in Intune, but it hasn't popped up yet in Azure. It's just because in the back end, these systems are syncing up slightly out of sync with each other. Okay, so just bear in mind, there are two different products. Mostly you will see it pop up in Azure, and it won't exist in Intune, and then later on it'll show up in Intune. Often it just happens together and you see it both at the same time. Sometimes you might see it in Intune first, and then later on it pops up in Azure. If after a considerable amount of time, like maybe half an hour or so, if it's not showing up in one or the other, go and check your configuration because maybe you made a configuration error. Okay. Now, the other thing we can do is we can use scripts for Windows devices and Mac OS devices. So the Intune management extension allows us to upload PowerShell scripts for Windows devices or shell scripts for Mac OS devices. Go to PowerShell script policy for Windows under our devices section of Microsoft Intune. What we'll do is create the script, wherever it is, test the script, and then we can go through to the policy section, select scripts, add, select Windows 10 and later, and then go through and upload the script that you created. Sign it to whatever devices you want to sign it to, and then monitor your script progress. Same thing with Mac OS. So there we go to it says creating a PowerShell script policy. That's not correct. Mac OS doesn't use PowerShell. So Mac OS use generally ZSH. It depends what you've got installed on your Mac OS, but it's mostly ZSH. So for Mac OS requirements there, so okay, Windows requirements 1607 and later. Everyone should be running versions later than that anyway. Devices must be joined to Azure AD, including hybrid AD joined devices, and automatic MDM enrollment must be enabled. Obviously, if it's not enrolled, how can we deploy a script to it? So that sort of makes sense. But yeah, for a Windows device must also be Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined. For Mac OS, obviously they can't be Azure AD joined. They can be Azure AD registered, but that doesn't help us. But the device must be managed by Intune. And for the Mac OS, the shell script must begin with a hash and an exclamation mark. So that is a Unix stroke Linux requirement. It needs to be in a valid location. Valid location based on the script that you're using, and the command line interpreters for the applicable shells must be installed. So applicable shell, whatever scripting environment you're using, such as ZSH. Okay. And then your student book, it just goes through the high-level steps for Windows to go through and do that, and the high-level steps for your Mac OS to go and do that. Okay. All right, folks. So that is my configuration profiles. And using scripts, the final lesson, as I mentioned earlier on, is just about our user profiles. So nothing new over here. You guys probably are familiar with this from previous versions of Windows. We'll talk about the user profile. We'll look at exploring our user profile types, examining options for minimizing user profile size, try and configure folder redirection, sync user state with enterprise state roaming, and configure enterprise state roaming in Azure. So obviously this year will be a bit new, the enterprise state roaming side of things, but all the rest of this we've had since Windows 2000. Okay, so there's nothing new over here. What is a user profile? Every user has a user profile. Now, we saw in our labs when we went and signed in for the very first time with a particular user, we get this little story that comes up and says, yeah, we're busy setting things up for you and it won't take long, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a couple of minutes later, pops up and we can log into the computer. Next time you log in, you don't have to do that. Well, that initial wait that you're waiting for things to happen is the profile being created. How does it create the profile? Created out of the default profile. So there is a default profile on every single Windows computer, which you can go and modify in your custom image. When we used to do imaging, we would do that. We'd go and configure what we want in the default profile. And then when a user logs in for the first time, their profile would be created from the default profile. along with a standard desktop for the organization that we had configured, the default profile, etc., whatever it is that we added into it. So as of, I think it was Windows Vista, where they started storing it under the C users folder. In XP and what have you, it was somewhere else. But it's basically under C:, because generally C: is your root directory in Windows, or your operating system directory. Let's use Microsoft terms, not Linux terms. So C:/users/ and then the login ID for that user. So generally it uses their login name or the name of the user folder. So it's unique for every user. Another user has no access to a particular user has no access to another user's folder if they both log on to the same computer. So when you log onto a computer, you get your own users folder. What do we store in our users folder, or our profile, our user profile? Well, basically everything. So your user registry settings, any group policy settings that have been configured for that user is stored under the nt-user.dat file in the root of your user profile. Environment settings, application data, user data. So things like your My Documents, your My Music, your My Videos, all of that stuff sits in your user profile. So it's user specific and personal. The system between user sessions. So we mentioned, created the first time you log in, second time you log in faster because it's already there. It doesn't have to be created. Now, they mentioned that it's not computer specific. What do we mean by that? Well, being not user specific means that if you're using something like a roaming user profile, so we've just been talking about a standard user profile, which exists on the computer itself, but what we could do is create a roaming user profile. In the case of a roaming user profile, the user profile is copied to a server somewhere on the network when they log off, and when they log back in, we copy it from the server. So if they've logged onto one computer, Windows 10 computer, and then they're going to log onto a different Windows 10 computer that they've never logged onto before, instead of going and recreating a new profile on that new Windows computer, it says, hold on a second, go check your store for your roaming user profile. Let me download it onto this computer. So it doesn't go and create a new computer on every single computer log on. So you're using just a single profile across all of these computers. So it's not computer specific, but it is operating system specific. So if you've got a roaming user profile, you logged onto Windows 10 computer for the first time, logged off, roaming profile's been saved, you go and log on to a Windows 8 computer, we'll create a new profile for you if you don't have a Windows 8 roaming profile, because it's a different computer. So we can't share profiles between different OS versions.
Hey, David, just a quick question.
Yes.
With Azure joined devices, where is the roaming profile saved?
So
like in our corporate environment, we will have a server somewhere we can store our roaming profiles.
we are just talking about domain joined computers.
Oh, okay. This is just domain. Okay,
yep,
sorry.
Yep,
Okay.
this has got nothing to do with Azure AD.
Okay.
So this is the traditional management of our user profiles.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was saying it's nothing new. You guys know this. You've been doing.
Oh, okay. This I was like, yeah. How can we do those things in Azure AD then? Okay, cool.
You can't.
Sure.
Well, there's different ways we can do it,
Uh-huh.
which is why the enterprise state roaming is talked about later on in this lesson.
Sure.
Okay, so we have mentioned the standard user profile, only available locally, doesn't roam. We spoke about the roaming user profile. So I mentioned there Windows 10 and later, add the .p6 extension to roaming folder. I actually think there used to be, didn't there? Yeah, in the student book, if you scroll further down under past temporary user profiles, I think there's a table there that lists out some versions. So Windows 8.1 was version 4. So Windows 8.1 and Windows 7 2012 R2 was version 4. Windows 8 and 2012 was version 3. Windows 7 and 2008 R2 was version 2. I don't know if they had a version on Vista or not, but if they did, it would be version 1. Remembering that between XP and Vista, things changed, so they started the versioning from Vista. So you may be saying, well, where's version 5? Well, version 5 was the initial Windows versions that came out. So from version 10, from Windows version 1607, it went from V5 to V6. But the initial Windows 10s had a V5 extension. Okay, what else we got here? Mandatory user profile. What is a mandatory user profile? So a mandatory user profile is a special type of roaming user profile where you've gone and changed the entuser.dat file to an entuser.man file. So that's how we create a mandatory user profile. You rename the entuser.dat to entuser.man. What it means is user changes are not persistent between sign-in attempts. So if a user, generally you use this on a kiosk computer. So you've got a kiosk computer in your reception area. General public can come and log in and go and view your products that you made, that they buy from you or whatever it is. And maybe they can actually access the internet as well to go and do some browsing. And as a normal user, maybe they click and save stuff on your desktop and it ends up in a big mess when they finished browsing your computer, reboot your computer, it's back to what it was. So nothing is persistent, nothing is saved from any changes the user might make on that computer. So that is our mandatory user profile. Now there is another type of special mandatory user profile. We call it a super mandatory user profile. So there what we do is not only is the entuser.dat renamed to entuser.man, but the actual profile name itself has a .man extension. So under the name of the user profile, we'll have a .man as well. What that means is if the roaming user profile, if the roaming server or the server with your roaming user profile cannot be accessed when you're loading the computer, when you're starting up the computer cannot start up. Otherwise, with a standard mandatory user profile, it'll simply use the cached copy. The problem is the cached copy could have changes that the user made. So super mandatory will prevent that from happening. Actually, I don't even know if the local copy would have any changes that a user made. I don't think so. But, yeah. Okay, what about a temporary user profile? Well, sometimes if we have an issue preventing the user profile from loading, it'll then allow you still to get onto the computer, but with a temporary user profile. Generally, you'll see that where you have configured profile sizes through group policy and a user has exceeded that profile size, it may then prevent them from actually accessing their profile, in which case they end up with a temporary user profile. They need to go and sort out their user profile, minimize the size of it, and it'll work again for them. Okay, the other thing with our roaming user profile, so it downloads the profile onto the computer when the user is logged on, and then uploads it to the server when they log off, but it still resides on that computer. So it means if you're a laptop computer and you've got a roaming user profile, and you go home, turn on your computer, but you don't get logged on with a temporary user profile, it doesn't create a new user profile, it simply uses your cached copy of your roaming user profile. Yes, it can't get access to the roaming server, but that doesn't matter, it uses your cached copy. And when you log on again at work, it'll update whatever needs updating. So some advantages of a roaming user profile. We said that our local user profile has got all of our user settings, data, etc. So they're my documents, etc., etc. So maybe they've been doing lots of work and it's all saved on their computer. They lose their computer or their hard disk breaks. And you say, well, just restore from backup. Well, I don't back up my stuff because I'm a user. I don't know how to do that. So what you can do with a roaming user profile, it sits on the server, you can be backing it up. So if anything does happen, you've at least got a backup of their stuff. So that's one advantage of a roaming user profile. But roaming user profiles can grow very, very big. Or user profiles can grow very, very big. So if a roaming user profile is very big, then it can slow down your logons and your logoffs because it's got to copy the whole thing down to the user's computer and copy it back up at the end of their session. So we can limit profile sizes by using quotas for user profiles, by redirecting folders out of the user profile, or by using the limit user profile size group policy setting. So with the redirection of folders, which we'll talk about in the next slide, we can redirect certain folders out of the user profile. We do that through group policies, a group policy configuration setting. When we redirect those folders out of a user profile, it resides on a server somewhere. So if I'm not using roaming user profiles, but I am using folder redirection, it's another way of ensuring we've got some user data stored on a file, on a folder somewhere, or on a server somewhere that we can back up. As we know, users don't back up their stuff. So it's another way of ensuring that we've at least providing some redundancy for a user. So what happens if the user has got redirected folders and they want to go home and do their work? Well, that's okay, because with the redirected folders, it simply works as a file server. The file is sitting on the file server, but they've got a cached copy on their computer. So they can go and make changes at home, sync it up when they get back to work next day. So it works all good. The other option available to us, store data files outside of a user profile. So we could have a dedicated shared folder, so a separate file server somewhere with shared folders. Yeah, we do that as well. Or a home folder. So there's other ways of storing stuff outside of a user's profile, but on a server somewhere. Now remember, if you're using stuff like redirected folders, if you're using stuff like roaming user profiles, if you're using any of these things over here, you've got user data sitting on servers elsewhere in the organization, meaning you're minimizing the amount of data migration you need to do when you do a new deployment. So we'll talk more about that when we talk about deployments on Thursday and Friday. Okay, so configuring my folder redirection.
Sorry, Dave.
Yes.
Just quickly, would the gold standard be just to not worry about any of that and just have OneDrive for business now?
So that is the modern method you could do. So what we're talking about here is a traditional way of doing it, but yes, if you want to do it in the modern method, then you could be using your OneDrive and your enterprise state roaming. So a combination of OneDrive and enterprise state roaming can give you similar features as we've got through roaming user profiles and folder redirection.
And the enterprise state roaming, is that essentially the same as a roaming profile in the traditional sense, but it saves to the cloud instead of...
It'll save it to your business, your OneDrive business.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so folder redirection. Redirect user profile folders to a network location, can be used with all user profile types. Does not copy locally when a user signs in. And the offline files provide access without network connectivity because they are cached on the user's computer. We configure through group policy. Available from any network computer. Centrally maintained and backed up. You can set quotas and different permissions. And it is transparent and always available for those users. And remember, it's the traditional way of managing our user data. So what is some of the new ways of doing it using enterprise state roaming? So with enterprise state roaming, cloud-based service, which together with Microsoft OneDrive, we can use to enable users to effortlessly transfer settings and access their data from any device. Okay, so I guess the advantage over here is you're not just tied to a Windows device because it's on Microsoft OneDrive from your data perspective. Enterprise data roaming is obviously specific to Windows. So seamlessly synchronize user data and settings between the client device and the cloud. You do require Azure AD Premium, and the Windows device must be Azure AD joined. So it only works for company-owned assets, because generally a personal device is Azure AD registered, not Azure AD joined. Syncs Windows 10 and later settings. So Windows 10, Windows 11 doesn't work for earlier versions. And Universal Windows Platform app settings, not your Win32 apps. So your older style desktop apps, the old Win32 apps, if you're still using those, they haven't been converted to Universal Windows Platform, it's not going to sync up those settings. So it's just something to bear in mind. Don't really worry about this here about Microsoft Edge. So it doesn't sync desktop app, which I said, or Microsoft Edge data. Use Microsoft Edge sync to sync Edge data. So this is just old information here. Microsoft Edge, the redesigned Microsoft Edge actually works with enterprise state roaming across non-Windows devices as well. ESR includes free unlimited use license for Azure Rights Management protection from Azure Information Protection, limited to encrypting and decrypting enterprise settings and application data. All they're saying over there is Your data that is being roamed by enterprise state roaming is protected through a limited use Azure Information Protection license. All the Azure Information Protection ensures is that your data is encrypted. It's a license that they give you for free, basically, to encrypt your data using Azure Rights Management. Okay, what else did they mention over there? To use ESR, the device must authenticate using an Azure AD identity, which is, it will anyway, because as we saw, it has to be Azure AD joined. So being an Azure AD joined, you're using Azure AD identity to Azure AD join the device. Data that roams. Let's go and have a look at the data that roams. In our student book, there is a bit of these slides are not that great. Data that roams, data location is region based, and then they talk here more about what data that roams. So in your student book, there's a little bit of a diagram. If you go down to enterprise state roaming, there's a little bit of a diagram there showing you some of the settings in that. Under the diagram, they mention there, enterprise state roaming syncs settings across Azure AD joined devices and provides users with the same experience across their devices. So separation of business and private data. If a user installs an app by using an Azure AD identity, the assumption is it's being used from a business perspective. If the app was installed using a Microsoft account, it says, okay, well, that's a personal app. Enterprise state roaming will sync the business apps. If you log on to your device using Microsoft account, it says, okay, cool, you're accessing stuff from a personal perspective, and it'll sync it using the standard Microsoft account sync. So you might have two different syncings on your computer, depending on whether you're using stuff from a business context or from a personal context. Okay, talking about the syncing, we mentioned that. You can enable and configure enterprise state roaming in the Azure portal, all through Windows PowerShell. In the portal, you can also view information such as which devices are synced by enterprise state roaming, etc. So we do this in the Azure portal under the devices section in the Azure portal. And then importantly, my synced data is kept in the same region. So they ensure that your data is kept in the same region to comply with the data privacy laws of various countries, etc. So if you're in Australia, your data will reside in Australia. If you're in America, your data will reside in America, etc. Data will be retained until manually deleted or determined to be stale. Now, remembering, if they delete the data, they're just deleting the stuff sitting on the cloud. It's not deleting it off your device. So what they say is that enterprise state roaming data that was synced with Azure will be kept for at least 90 days after it was last accessed. If they delete it after 90 days, well, it's not in the cloud, but it's still on your device. Next time you sync up, it'll be synced back up again. Okay. That's pretty much the end of the slides, but there is, I think, a bit more information in your student book there. They just talk about enterprise state roaming and Microsoft Edge. So with a new Chromium-based Edge. So the sync solution isn't tied to the Windows sync system. So it enables Microsoft Edge to be used on Windows 8.1, iOS, Android, macOS, etc. And it'll sync with the Microsoft Edge sync. It'll sync favorites, passwords, form fill, history, overtab, settings, extensions, etc. Okay, that is pretty much it. They're just going through how to set it up in your student book. There's a little bit of repetition over there, but we've covered all of those concepts. Okay, folks. So there's the theory for that lesson. Are we going time-wise? 1:45. So we've got a few labs to do over here. Labs. There we go. So we've got 5 labs to do. So we're going to go and create and deploy configuration profiles, using a configuration profile to configure kiosk mode, using a configuration profile to configure iOS and iPadOS Wi-Fi settings, using group policy analytics to validate GPO support in Intune, and monitoring device and user activity in Intune. So jump in and start those labs. I'll let you know what percentage completion we're looking at. at the end of that. Configuration profiles, GPS activity. Okay, thanks. Come to the end of the practice lab, monitor device and user activity in Intune. And it will show up as 51% complete at that stage. How was lunch today for everyone? Okay. How was it compared to yesterday? Okay. Yeah, yesterday was a bit dry. What they did is they apparently delivered that at lunch like 11:15. But then she never notified us at 12 o'clock. It was, yeah, so
Oh, right.
by the time we got it was a bit dry.
I just put it in microwave at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, once warming it up, it wasn't too bad.
Hey,
Yeah,
David,
the sandwich was good. Yes.
got a question about configuration profiles. Um, at work, we had a look at the configuration profiles that we had, but we couldn't figure out a way to actually duplicate configuration profiles. So we wanted to duplicate something so that we can add on or remove certain settings in there, but we couldn't see there was any way to actually duplicate a created configuration profile. Just wondering
So what you wanted to
if
do is just go to the profile and create a copy of that profile.
yes.
Okay, I haven't heard about that request before.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find something about that for you, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry, David.
Yes, Bobby.
So should add as well that those smarter than me at work, they know that they can use graph to actually duplicate it.
Yes, you can use graph. That is true.
Yeah, so they're just wondering if there's like a simpler way, or more,
I think there
in
might be.
the GUI.
Give me a second. I'll have a look.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
running the DS reg CMD status command check the machine's Azure AD joined.
Yeah.
There's another status object that says enterprise joined. What's that?
Enterprise joined. I think that's got to do with your licensing. In other words, you are receiving the enterprise version of the OS from your organization. So
Okay.
this is basically your your Windows enterprise license.
Okay. The machine is running enterprise Windows 10.
So that it's only through what do they call it? So you can't buy that. It's through a sort of subscription service, but it's for a corporate customer essentially. So it has to. System, I call it the enterprise system because they should be managed through your Intune there. For example, if it was a user device, a BYD device, that you then set up a policy to upgrade it to your enterprise version, and that person leaves the organization, it's obviously not going to contact your system.
Yeah.
So eventually they'll time out or will no longer be an enterprise machine. It'll fail its check.
Yeah. Okay. But it could still.
I think it's 3 months. I think they can use it for 3 months afterwards.
Okay.
Before it expires.
Okay. But it could still be both Azure AD joined.
That's different, yeah. The Azure AD joining into Azure AD.
Yeah.
You can have a Windows Player device Azure AD joined as well.
Yeah.
Bobby, I've just sent you a link to an article there about duplicating the settings catalog policy, and I've tried it by creating this policy over here, but it doesn't seem to work in. So apparently on the ellipsis over here, if I click on the ellipsis, I should see delete and duplicate, but I only see delete.
Okay. Hmm.
And they also mentioned you can right click it, but right clicking doesn't do anything for me. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's something that was available and they've removed.
I think it might have been one of my senior team members. She says that I think it was there during preview, but
Right.
after a while they just removed it. I think it
Okay.
was called clone. But yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, have a read of that article I clicked there, because definitely it
Yep.
looks like it used to be possible.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. Don't know for what reason they might have taken it away.
Awesome. Thank you.
All good.
Hey, David, I need some help.
Back. That's Nia, is it?
Yep.
What's up, Nia?
So I am in device restrictions, and I have blocked gaming and privacy options.
Mhm.
Yeah, after that, there is number 12 that says on the device restrictions blade. Where is device restrictions and expand start?
Easiest thing over here, just go and click that little arrow to minimize what you've just done.
Okay.
That way you can see all your menu options. It's just rather a busy window. So just scroll your screen up a little bit there.
Yep.
Scroll all the way to the top of the screen.
Just a sec. I'll.
Over there, so you minimize that. Now, if you see here, these are my device restrictions.
Yeah.
Everything listed over here. So scroll, where are we looking for? Start. Scroll further down.
Yeah. Just a sec. Yeah.
And
Oh,
then
start.
expand it out and you'll find it in there.
Oh,
Later
perfect.
on, you've got to go and do something for antivirus. Again, if you just minimize it, it makes it easier to find.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All good.
There should be an option for secret. There is one for the first one.
Yeah.
Are there any circumstances where the sync button would be under the work or school account?
Yeah, because you're not domain joined or not necessarily not enrolled into Intune. So if you're not seeing a sync button, go and check and see that you're enrolled in Intune.
Okay, but looks like it is enrolled.
It is enrolled.
Looks like it, yeah.
So there's no device sync status there, is it? When you go into
Well, I can see the MDM URL in the DS spread CMD.
okay, which number of the box is it? CWS one.
There's no issue.
Oh.
So either.
You're missing the certificate.
Yeah, user certificate.
Just go back and certificate to yes, already joined. But yes, already joined, you probably not. You're not enrolled in the team. Who did you enroll this with? Was this with Elon? Did you give Elon a license?
Yes. And then I want to.
Okay, just jump onto your server one and just go and check Elon. It's a pain, it logs you out every time you go out of it. Never used to do that, but new lab, it does it all the time.
I've just like in the Azure on my computer. I'm logging into that, as opposed to jumping to the server.
Oh, okay, yeah, you can do that as well. It's, yeah. Licenses. Actually, while we're there, can you just go to scroll? Just go use. You wouldn't even have given the license otherwise. So it's a paper. Just go on that. Just add it simply. Licenses. Other licenses assigned to him as well. And you, in your previous labs, your Intune was working, so you enabled NDM, you enabled NDM for your Intune, for your Windows devices. Just go to devices and log devices. And automatic enrollment.
Did you sync it from the Intune board?
Go to devices. Well, only if the device is there, but I don't think the device is there. So you can see devices, click on the devices. Yeah, you see without that certificate, the device is not there. So you can't sync. That's why you don't sync.
Somewhere in the 8-hour window.
No, something weird near there. Just go back to your WS1. Go to
Work any build with all ones, see if there's any errors.
disconnect the device and reconnect it and see. Sometimes the license doesn't quite kick in. Sometimes it takes a little while for the license to actually become valid. Maybe you had done the
Before the license is given.
yeah. Could have been something like that. So, but we can definitely see the license there now. So let's just do that. That's what admin possible. Yeah, we started. What we do is we remove it and put it back in. Okay, so automatic enrollment is on. You've got a license. And then it should be. Check that in. Let me just watch and see what we can. Yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just enter the.
Okay, is that how you did it earlier on?
Yes.
So that's where your problem is. What you've done is you've done Azure AD registration, not an Azure AD claim. Azure AD registration isn't going to enroll your time to be in June. So what you need to do is you need to click on that one. So that is join this device to Azure AD. So that's what behind it. All good. All good. As long as we can see why it wouldn't work, then you know. All good.
David, a question for you.
Yes.
When I check Intra or Azure AD, I can see there are 3 clients or 3 devices.
Mhm.
Why are they not across in Intune? Because we have selected auto enrollment in Intune. Why wouldn't that come across to Intune there?
Which device is that you're not seeing?
So for example, CCLA2 and CCLA1.
Okay, so CL1 shouldn't be showing up at all at the moment because we haven't actually added it.
Mhm.
I think what happened is earlier on you did the device registration with CL1, which is why you're seeing it there. So in the device registration, it's not going to be automatically enrolled into CL1. And with CL2, when we configured CL2, we didn't have automatic enrollment into Intune at that time when we did the enrollment. So that's why it's not showing up under Intune.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, CL1 shouldn't actually be showing up there. You can basically go and unenroll it. So go into your CL1 and remove that enrollment, or you can delete it from your Intune.
Yep. I'll just go and delete from here.
But yeah, that's the reason why it's showing up in Azure but not in Intune.
So I can delete that from Admin Center as well, Intra Admin Center.
Yes, so CL1 at the moment shouldn't be Azure. It'll cause you problems later on in the week when we actually do an Azure AD join for CL1, a hybrid Azure join for CL1. But the moment CL1 is just a main join.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm trying.
For register versus join, David,
Yeah.
join in manage, whereas register.
So registration, you are registering a user is registering a device. It's linked to your user credential.
Yeah.
Joining a device is a device join.
Yeah.
You're joining the actual device. So
But in terms of feature wise, more management capabilities with join.
correct. Yep.
A machine that's not Azure AD joined, not enterprise joined, and not domain joined still classed as in a workgroup.
It'd be in a work group, yeah. Yeah.
Percentage you had to get up to by the end of the day.
So we're going up to end of the monitor device and the user activity in Intune.
That is that about 50%?
51% of that, yeah.
Okay, Bali.
Yeah.
The where we go to set the MDM and view the scope.
Yes.
To enrollment, where it says MDM terms of use URL. I know you were referring to giving our users terms and conditions before. That's where we would pop in our own.
No, that's just your URL. There's another section where you would go and configure the terms and conditions.
Okay.
It's always good to have terms and conditions that they need to accept.
Okay. I'll hover over the little eye.
You might be right. That might be where you configure. Well, what does it tell you when you hover over the little eye?
It says the terms of use endpoint is used to display the terms of service to end users before enrolling their device for management.
Yeah. You know, I think you're right. It would be there that you enter. It's always a good idea to have that in because that way they can't come back and say, "Oh, but you terms."
Yeah, because I'm guessing when you populate that, when they download company portal sign, it would then at least show them they're agreeing to. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because nothing comes up when you do it now, so probably I don't know, just maybe a blank page they've got there or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is that. This is not. You try and browse to it.
Right.
Actually,
Yeah.
I have a question again.
All right. I'll be there in a sec. Yes.
On this device restriction.
Here's device restrictions.
Yeah.
And we're going to start. And we start scrolling down. Start. Extended out. And then the other one is unboxed generated bias. I know it can be a bit tricky that.
with David.
Yes.
Sorry, do you mind asking a question as well?
Yeah, yeah.
So when it talks about platform allowable, what's it actually talking about here with respect to each of these?
Whether they can be multiple.
Okay.
So you're restricting it. So you're allowing these, you're allowing this to be done from a work perspective, but not from a personal perspective. So you're blocking anybody adding personal device as an identifies work profile identifies device.
Will there be somewhere in Intune where you define attributes for a corporate owned device, like a serial number or something?
I'm not sure exactly what this does with the Android, because my understanding is Android identifies work profile and Android device administrator is only ever done from a work perspective anyway, because those are work devices. A user would enroll their device.
Yeah, right.
From a personal perspective. But I guess that's in case somebody's got their own Google account or whatever and tries to do it. I mean, I've never done that from a personal perspective, but maybe you could do it. So what's this doing? It's just blocking that capability.
And what's it talking? So is this referring to an Intune Android device administrator? Or is
This is so on your in your student book when we're talking about enrolling Android devices.
Yeah.
From a normal user owned device, they do it through the
Yeah.
But from a work perspective, there's the Android enterprise work profile, there's the Android device administrator, and there's the Android. There's three of them. I can't remember the other one.
Okay.
But generally, this is done from a work perspective. So I'm not sure why a user would be doing it from a personally owned device.
Okay.
This is something new they've added in. This is one of the new steps in the lab. So we didn't have this in the previous lab before.
Okay.
Right. Again, basically what they're doing is they're showing you that you can do restrictions.
Yeah. You
can do it based on minimum maximum ranges, manufacturer names, etc.
Yeah. Awesome.
So you could create one where you block in particular Android devices. You could block it from a work perspective.
Instead of version. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, beautiful. David.
visual store with 51%.
You're steaming through it. You're enjoying those labs. You're doing well. Yeah, go grab it. Grab a tea or a coffee. I'm not sure if we're going to do that today. So we're going on for about 3. There's still tea time to be had, and just watching how everyone is progressing. So we might do that tomorrow.
Data dem, unless you've got someone that needs to enroll 15 or more devices linked to your account, right?
Depending on what you're doing, because remember, there's lots of limitations on what the DEM can do. So it's really a userless device that they would be enrolling.
Yeah.
So you got the example I used earlier on was like the restaurant where you might have, 100 terminals that you want to enroll, but it's running just a particular app for the restaurant.
What would sorry, do you mind recapping some of those restrictions that we spoke about before?
So with them, there's no per user access, so no email access, no you can't create an email account, you can't add certificates to the computer for things like Wi-Fi or VPNs or anything like that. It's with iOS devices, you can't use your enhanced security mode, and with certain, so when the Android work profile, you can only do 10 devices. So,
Okay.
Number of restrictions depending on what it is that you're enrolling using the DEM account.
Okay.
But the main one is it's a userless device that you can't set up emails or anything like that on the device. So if it's a device that a user is meant to use as a device for accessing emails, that won't work doing it with the DEM account.
Cool. Or like Qantas, for example, with all their machines, could use a DEM account.
Yeah, for the customers what have you to configure things to stuff into the absolutely. Okay, guys, it's going on for 3 o'clock, so let us do our afternoon tea break. I'm just checking to see how everyone is progressing. I'm just wondering if we do one more lesson maybe today. 46, Let's take our tea break. I'll make my decision after tea break. I know lots of people probably carry on with their labs during tea break, so I'll make my decision after tea break. I'll put up the timer for tea, 15-minute tea break. Again, if you want to just keep on going with your labs, you're welcome to do that. But I don't want to deny people their tea breaks.
Including even tea, coffee. Sunday, or the rest.
How long did your devices take to pull up an issue?
After I corrected one
He said we would make that mistake before. How long did yours take, Vips, to show up in Intune? Aaron's what? 9 minutes or so? Yeah, okay.
Yours is not coming up or what?
Yeah, it's just popped up. Find a way in.
We just walked off the way. I didn't have my card with me, but I don't know what. Not some of the real classes. Closed it for some reason. We just went the other way. So,
David, Intune management extension we were talking about before.
Which Intune management extension?
The search.
Oh, so that you can do run scripts in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that come down automatically when you deploy Intune, or do you have to install that separately?
No, it's there. It's there with your Intune.
It comes already.
Yeah. You need to install the. You need to upload the scripts into Intune.
Yeah.
And you can apply them to your various computers.
Okay. Yeah, it's not the exploit of the best defender. That sounds so dodgy. On my own.
I guess you did.
Yeah. David, do you want something?
I'm good, thank you.
Bad left before you want closed.
Was that? All right. Well, that's not tea break over. Okay, you got 50. You got 50 seconds. I'll give you your 50 seconds.
Really good fun.
Check it out, you'll send. Why don't you need two of these? Why is it gonna be one of these and one of these?
Always like that.
The deltas are the best. Looking forward to it.
Like the old expensive commodities. That's best. Yeah.
All right, folks. So looking at our